The year is 1959, the height of the Cold War and the dead of winter, when 9 Soviet university students embark on a hiking excursion into the frozen wilderness of Siberia and never return.
For several decades, the Dyatlov Pass incident remained a mystery buried deep in the northern Ural Mountains, a chilling enigma that defied explanations.
Joanne Gaume and Alexander Putzrin, professors from EPFL and ETH Zurich in Switzerland, are changing this.
And now, scientists finally solved the Dyatlov Pass mystery, and it's not good. The perilous odyssey. It all started with a skiing expedition of no return carried out by a group of students who were grade 2 hikers. The goal was not so simple: to reach Mount Otorten from the small settlement of Vijay, which is about 300 kilometers apart. If successful, the hikers would level up their hiking grade from grade 2 to grade 3 by receiving a certificate of completion. But unfortunately, none of them made it back alive. It was January 1959. Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, assembled a group of 9 other students of the same institute. The group consisted of 8 men, namely Igor Dyatlov, Yuri Doroshenko, Alexander Kolevatov, Yuri Krivonishenko, Rustem Slobodin, Nikolai Thribo-Brignol, Semyon Zolotaryov, and Yuri Yudin, and 2 women, Lyudmila Dubinina and Zinaida Kolmogorova. It is believed that all 10 were excited about the trip, because at the time, grade 3 was the highest available certification in the Soviet Union, so they designed a route to reach their destination. After the route was approved by the Sverdlovsk City Route Commission, the group of 10 was confirmed on January 8, 1959. Just so you know, this route was estimated as Category 3, which means it was the most difficult, and to make matters worse, the group decided to start their journey around the most difficult time to traverse the route. By January 23rd, the group had been issued their route book, and on the same day, they left Sverdlovsk City. In the early hours of January 25, 1959, the group arrived at Ivdel, a town at the center of the northern province of Sverdlovsk Oblast, by train. From there, they took a truck to Vijay, which is the last inhabited settlement to the north. By January 28th, they had progressed towards Gora Otorten, but suddenly, one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, could no longer proceed with the hike. Yuri had several health ailments, which included rheumatism and a congenital heart defect. And on that day, he was having knee and joint pain, so he turned back to his home. The remaining 9 hikers, however, proceeded with the initial plan and continued the trek. The rest of the journey would have been the start of the mystery, but the group wrote in diaries and documented on cameras, which made it possible to track their route. On January 31st, the group arrived at the edge of a highland area and began to prepare for climbing. The next day, they were already moving through the pass. The plan was to get over the pass and make camp for the next night on the opposite side. But the weather was bad, and it got worse with snowstorms and decreasing visibility that they lost their direction. When they realized that they were lost, they decided to set up camp on the slope of the mountain and wait for the storm to be over. From that moment on, the mystery began, as that was the last activity documented in the diaries and the camera. The silent witnesses. Before the group left, Dyatlov promised to send a telegram to their sports club as soon as the group returned to Vijay. The message was estimated to come in no later than February 12th, but as the journey progressed, the group discovered that sending the message would take longer. On February 12th, no message came from the group, but there was no reaction since the estimated date had been changed. However, things changed on February 20th when nothing came from the hikers. The hikers' relatives demanded a rescue operation, and the school authorities sent student volunteers and teachers to check on them. After searching for days, they came back with nothing. At this point, everyone knew that something terrible had happened. This made the families involve the higher authorities, who used every means available, including aircraft, to search. Soon they were met with something truly disturbing: the group's abandoned and badly damaged tent. The tent was empty, half torn down and covered with snow. Next were 9 sets of footprints left by people wearing only socks, or a single shoe, or even barefoot. The authorities followed the steps, and it only led down to the edge of a nearby wood. After walking 500 meters more, the searchers found visible remains of fire, and right there was a grisly sight. The bodies of Krivonishenko and Doroshenko. Both were shoeless and dressed only in underwear. By their bodies was a large Siberian pine whose branches were broken up to 5 meters high. This tree led the searches to 3 more bodies of Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin, who died in poses suggesting that they were attempting to return to the tent. This discovery left the searchers with 4 more hikers who remained lost until after 2 months. Their bodies were finally found on May 4th under 4 meters of snow in a ravine about 75 meters from where the other bodies were found. 3 of them were better dressed than the ones discovered in underwear, and this suggests that they may have taken the clothing of those who died before them. Initially, medical examination of the first 5 bodies found no injuries on 4 of them that might have led to their deaths, except for one who had a small crack in his skull, so it was considered that they died of hypothermia. However, the narrative of the incident shifted after an examination was done on the 4 bodies that were later recovered. Thibaut Brignol had major skull damage, while Dubinina and Zolotaryov had major chest fractures. It is important to note that no external wounds were associated with these bone fractures, which indicates that they had been subjected to a high level of pressure. According to experts, to get this type of injury, an extremely high force comparable to a car crash is required. In addition to the bone fractures, Dubinina was missing her tongue, eyes, part of the lips, as well as facial tissue and a fragment of skull bone, while Zolotaryov had his eyeballs missing, and Alexander Kolevatov his eyebrows. Apart from the bodies, the investigators noted that the tent of the group had been ripped from within, and the victims had died 6 hours after their last meal. That's not all. One of the victims had some levels of radiation on his clothing, which raised questions about what exactly happened to this group of hikers. Questions remained unanswered, but in no time, the incident's news became widespread and was soon named after the group's leader, Dyatlov Pass incident. With more questions trooping in, investigation kicked in, and instead of leading to answers, led to a wide array of theories. An avalanche of uncertainties. First off, all fingers pointed at the indigenous Mansai people, who are reindeer herders local to the area. It was speculated that they had attacked the group and murdered them for trespassing. However, when the Mansi were interrogated, they claimed that they did no harm to the hikers. Supporting their claims is the search that only found footprints of the hikers and also an examination of the bodies that showed no sign of struggle. Also, the injuries on the hikers could not have been caused by humans, except they are giants. Another point to note is that according to one of the diaries, the Mansi people were not hostile to the hikers. A part of the diary reads, "Now most of the guys sit here and sing songs to the guitar on the occasion that they do not work today. It seems this is the last time we heard so many good new songs. But we hope that Rustic will live up to the challenge. We learned some Mansi words from the guys." At the time, the official conclusion was that the group members had died because of a compelling natural force, and the possibility of a crime had been discounted. However, as days rolled into weeks and weeks into months, different reports took the case in different directions. There was a report suggesting that the skin of the hikers had a deep brown tan, which made a lot of people point out the level of radiation discovered on one of the victims' clothing. Many speculated that the Soviet Union might have been testing out a nuclear weapon that actually took out these hikers on that fateful night. Another group of hikers that were about 50 kilometers south of the incident reported that they saw strange orange spheres in the sky to the north on the night of the incident. To corroborate this story, many witnesses said that they observed similar spheres in Ivdel and adjacent areas continually during the period from February to March 1959. And to make matters worse, these sightings were not noted in the 1959 investigations. This led to the theory that the hikers had been attacked by aliens and that the government was intentionally trying to bury the truth. After the pictures were released, a particular picture taken by the group had been going around, leading to another theory. This blurry picture shows a really tall figure behind the tree, which led to the speculation that the hikers were attacked by the creature, which is suspected to be a Bigfoot, after the picture was taken. According to reports, over 70 theories were put forward concerning this case, and in all, authorities maintained that the hikers had died of hypothermia because of the cold weather conditions at the time of the hike. Years passed and the case went cold, but the families of the victims and the public never stopped talking about the incident. Years later, scientists and researchers began to dig deep into the case to determine what actually happened to the hikers in February 1959, and it only led to more revelations. The unaccepted revelations. One of the speculated causes of death is katabatic wind proposed by a Swedish-Russian expedition team who investigated the site. Katabatic winds are not your regular winds. They are rare and can be very violent. This was said because of an incident that occurred in 1978 at Ural Mountain in Sweden, where 8 hikers were killed and 1 was severely injured. According to them, a sudden katabatic wind would have made the hikers flee their tents and seek shelter behind the tree line. They backed this up with the fact that there was a flashlight on top of the tent that was left turned on, possibly to allow the hikers to find their way back to the tent once the wind subsided. They explained that the 4 injured hikers might have gotten injured due to one of the 2 bivouac shelters' collapse. Another popularized hypothesis in a book written by Donnie Icar is that the wind going around the area can produce infrasound, which is capable of causing panic attacks in humans. In addition, the infrasound generated by the wind as it passed over the top of the mountain was responsible for causing physical discomfort and mental distress to the hikers. It is believed that the hikers ran away from their tents because of their panic and fled down the slope. Icar claims that by the time they were further down the hill, they would have been out of the infrasound's path and would have regained their composure, but in the darkness would have been unable to return to their shelter. He also mentioned that the traumatic injuries suffered by 3 of the victims were the result of them stumbling over the edge of a ravine in the darkness and landing on the rocks at the bottom. In another speculation, the campsite was within the path of a Soviet parachute mine exercise. This theory alleges that the hikers, woken by loud explosions, fled the tent in a shoeless panic and found themselves unable to return for supply retrieval. After some members froze to death attempting to endure the bombardment, others commandeered their clothing only to be fatally injured by subsequent parachute mine concussions. Many people believed this theory to be the truth because there were records of parachute mines being tested in the area around the time the hikers were there. This theory supports the reported sightings of glowing orbs floating in the sky, allegedly photographed by the hikers. As for the bodies found with injuries, some have speculated that the bodies were unnaturally manipulated and also pointed to the fact that photographs of the tent show that it was erected incorrectly, something the hikers wouldn't have done considering that they were very experienced hikers. Similarly, a theory alleges the testing of radiological weapons because of some levels of radioactivity found on one of the clothing. But if that happened, it would have affected all and not just one of the hikers. The explanation that can be given for skin and hair discoloration is the process of mummification after months of exposure to cold and air. Empowering this theory is the suspicious act of the Soviet authorities initially suppressing the files of the incident. This was seen as evidence of a cover-up, however. Concealing information about incidents like the Dyatlov Pass was standard procedure in the USSR. However, by the late 1980s, all Dyatlov files had been released. One generally unacceptable theory is that the hikers died of hypothermia, as posited by the International Science Times. It is believed that hypothermia can cause a behavior known as paradoxical undressing, in which hypothermic subjects remove their clothes in response to perceived feelings of burning warmth. Many have suggested that this is unlikely because others in the group appear to have acquired clothing from their dead friends, which shows that they were of a sound mind at the time and not exhibiting paradoxical undressing. Another theory is that the group may have consumed magic mushrooms, which are known to be hallucinogenic mushrooms common in the Urals. But with all that the theories alleged, the case only remained cold for years until it was finally reopened in February 2019, based on the public's unending cry for truth. However, this investigation only took 3 theories that are exclusively weather-related into account. But before we go into it, let's discuss our subscriber's pick. This image showcases how close the hikers were to their destination, but unfortunately, they didn't make it there or back. For many years, the question remains, what happened to the hikers? A question that has remained unanswered for decades, and now scientists have finally solved the Dyatlov Pass mystery, and it's not good. More investigation into the case has shown that something really horrible happened to them leaving no trace behind. What could it be? Let's find out the outcome of the investigation. The re-investigation. Ultimately, the federal Russian investigation concluded that a slab avalanche, which involves a slab of snow breaking away from a deeper layer of snow and sliding downhill in large block-like chunks, most likely sent the 9 doomed hikers to their icy graves in 1959. Although this theory has been suggested for years, many people have remained skeptical of the explanation. However, in 2021, a study that was published by 2 Swiss scientists in the journal Communications, Earth and Environment offered a scientific explanation. Initially, when the snow avalanche was proposed, it was found to be inconsistent with the evidence of a lower-than-usual slope angle, scarcity of avalanche signs, uncertainties about the trigger mechanism, and abnormal injuries of the victims. But as the explanation went on, there may have been actual evidence of slab evidence, which could have formed from the wind causing snow to accumulate on a slope near the hiker's campsite. The study talks about a combination of irregular topography, a cut made in the slope to install the tent, and the subsequent deposition of snow induced by strong katabatic winds that may have led to the slab avalanche, creating severe yet non-fatal injuries to the hikers before they died of hypothermia.
Released right above the tent and surprised them while they were sleeping. Some of them got injured and they had to cut the tent from the inside to escape. And without appropriate clothes, it was impossible for them to survive with these extreme weather conditions, especially because they didn't want to leave their injured friends behind.
According to this theory, the avalanche fell upon the hikers while they slept, forcing them to flee their tent in the cold night without much warning, which could explain why their bodies were found in various states of undress, with a litany of strange injuries. To test this theory, the team created a simulation based on weather reports from the time of the incident to show how the avalanche would have come down on the hikers. And since the hikers were presumably lying flat on their backs while sleeping, a sudden slab of snow falling on them could have caused severe but non-lethal thorax and skull injuries. Although this doesn't explain all that happened to the hikers, such as why one of them lost her tongue, this explanation sounds like a solid, logical counter-argument to many conspiracy theories that have been put forward. After many questioned why the hikers were victims of avalanche if they were that experienced, experts responded that although the skiers didn't correctly place their tent, their subsequent actions were just following the books. It is believed that they conducted an emergency evacuation to the ground that would be safe from an avalanche. They took shelter in the woods, started a fire, and dug a snow cave. According to experts, if they were inexperienced, they would have stayed near the tent and dug it out. That way, they would have survived. But every experienced hiker knows how dangerous avalanches are in the mountains. In other words, the hiker's expertise was their doom. As for an explanation as to how a hiker lost her tongue, experts believe that it might have been the result of a wild animal feeding on the dead body, but that was not widely accepted by the public. Even after all of these explanations, many still did not believe in the theory, so more details were requested. Additional nuances. At the request of the families of the victims, a review of the 2019 investigations was conducted by investigators from the Investigative Committee of the Russian Federation, known as ICRF. These investigators confirmed the avalanche, adding important details to it. For starters, it was confirmed that the weather on the night of the tragedy was very harsh, with wind speeds up to hurricane force of about 20 to 30 meters per second, a snowstorm, and temperatures reaching -40 degrees Celsius. Back when the case was freshly investigated, the investigators didn't consider this temperature as they arrived at the scene 3 weeks after, when the weather had much improved and the snow settled. With these new details, it is believed that the harsh weather played an important role in the events of the tragic night, which have now been restructured to corroborate the avalanche theory. And it goes like this. The group arrives at the mountain on February 1 and erects a large 9-person tent on an open slope without any natural barriers such as forests. On the day and a few preceding days, a heavy snowfall persisted with strong wind and frost. The group traversing the slope and digging a tent site into the snow weakened the snow base. During the night, the snowfield above the tent started to slide down slowly under the weight of the new snow, gradually pushing on the tent fabric, starting from the entrance. The group wakes up and starts evacuation in panic, with only some able to put on warm clothes. With the entrance blocked, the group escapes through a hole cut in the tent fabric and descends the slope to find a place perceived as safe from the avalanche only 1,500 meters down at the forest border. Because some of the members have only incomplete clothing, the group splits. Two of the group, only in their underwear and pajamas, were found at the Siberian pine tree near a fire pit. Their bodies were found first and confirmed to have died from hypothermia. 3 hikers, including Dyatlov, attempted to climb back to the tent, possibly to get sleeping bags. They had better clothes than those at the fire pit, but were still quite light and with inadequate footwear. Their bodies were found at various distances from the campfire, in poses suggesting that they had fallen exhausted while trying to climb in deep snow in extremely cold weather. The remaining 4, equipped with warm clothing and footwear, were trying to find or build a better camping place in the forest further down the slope. Their bodies were found 70 meters from the fireplace under several meters of snow, and with traumas indicating that they had fallen into a snow hole formed above a stream. According to the investigators, the mistake of the group was to split up rather than build a temporary camp down the forest and try to survive the night. They also mentioned that the negligence of the 1959 investigators has led to their reports creating more questions than answers, as well as giving room for more questions than answers. Further supporting the avalanche theory is a team of physicists and engineers who demonstrated how a small slide of snow slab could damage a tent and cause injuries like the ones found on the hikers. However, this evidence still isn't widely accepted today. Many have held on to their different beliefs and versions of the case, while some have even provided contradictory evidence. A ripple of inconsistency. Skeptics have pointed out that the location of the incident does not seem like where an avalanche took place. This is because an avalanche would have left certain patterns and debris scattered all over the place which was not found in the site. Also, the bodies that were discovered before the others were covered with a very shallow layer of snow. This means that if the avalanche was as strong as the experts pictured, it should have swept the bodies away. If that happened, it would have caused more major injuries and would have damaged the tree line. Another point mentions how other expeditions held in the same region over the years have never reported conditions that may cause an avalanche. This was backed up by the result of a study using the latest technology that revealed the location was not likely to experience such an avalanche. In addition, an analysis of the terrain and the slope showed that even if there could have been a very specific avalanche in the area, its path would have gone past the tent, which would have collapsed horizontally and not from the side. Also, considering that Dyatlov was an experienced skier and that Zolotaryov was about to acquire his master's in ski instructions, they wouldn't have camped anywhere in the path of a potential avalanche. Finally, skeptics believe that the footprint patterns leading away from the tent were inconsistent with a group of people in panic, as all the footprints better suited the description of people walking at a normal pace. With this evidence, what do you think of the Dyatlov Pass incident? An enigma for the ages or a mystery ripe for future revelation? Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.